Hi, this is Brian Kim. I want to share with you this case of a patient that I was doing cataract surgery on and then ended up with an anterior capsule tear. I didn't realize it until halfway through the lens removal. And thinking back to it, I'm not quite sure what happened, but I gotta believe I must have grasped the peripheral bag. I must have been on top of the bag instead of in the bag when I performed my cross-chop maneuver, because it's right in line with my location of the cross-chop maneuver. And so you're going to see how I'm able to carefully still disassemble this lens, remove the lens, and remove all the lens contents, and putting the lens new implant in the capsular bag with the haptics perpendicular to the tear without doing vitrectomy and without losing vitreous. So I used a corneal mark to help me center inside the rhexis and using the cotton tip to help center the eye. And then I make my paracentesis incision first on the right side and then the left side, making sure I'm flat to iris plane, which creates a nice corneal shelf, which will allow me to achieve a self-sealing incision. This is intracameral epinephrine and then some dispersive viscoelastic. I'm twisting the cannula into the incision to perform the Orlock technique to turn the eye down for me. And this is a triplanar corneal incision. I make a vertical groove, place the blade into the deep part of the groove, tunnel, and then I enter. Using the cannula, the same cannula, performing the Orlock technique to pull the eye down so I can center it better. And using the Moria sharp tip rhexis forceps, I puncture the center, pull down, and grabbing the right side of the tear, I go around circumferentially. Again, using the cannula to control the eye as well. Get a nice rhexis. Finish off the rhexis. Burp some viscoelastic out. Put some viscoelastic on the cornea. And this is a capsule fornix hydrodissection technique. I place a cannula under the rhexis edge, contra-incisionally. Just doing a little jiggle. Get a nice wave. Lift the lens up. Decompress the bag. See that dense lens material nasally. It's obviously hard to see the rhexis edge because of that white lens material. It would have been curious if I did use trypan blue. Maybe I would have been able to avoid the anterior capsule tear. Lift the incision with a chopper, go in with irrigation off to minimize Descemet's trauma. Slide the chopper under the rhexis edge contra-incisionally, the phaco tip vertically sub-incisionally, bringing the instruments together and fracturing the lens in half. That is the double chop. Sliding the chopper under the right heminucleus, hooking the peripheral lens, pulling it centric toward the phaco tip, and fracturing the lens in half, the right piece. And that is the cross chop. Lifting that first quadrant up out of the bag with vacuum and emulsifying it. Teasing that second quadrant with the chopper, loosening it up. Placing the chopper around the lens piece, pulling it centered toward the phaco tip, fracturing it against the phaco tip. Another cross chop maneuver. Using some vacuum to grab that fragment up, crushing the lens piece with the instruments, and using phaco and vacuum to remove the lens pieces. As I look back at the case, everything seemed pretty routine. I didn't see anything in particular that was bad. Everything looks pretty good. Performing another cross-chop maneuver, everything looks pretty good. But now, in retrospect, I feel like now that I did that chop maneuver, I do see the anterior capsule tear. I saw it fluttering in the periphery. Again, I didn't notice it at the time, but I feel like there's an anterior capsule tear now. It's already happened. But again, I didn't identify it at this time. So I turned the Second heminucleus around. It's already coming out of the bag. That's easy. Flank the lens with the instruments, crushing it in half. Doing the same thing here, using some vacuum to hold it and crushing it in half. I can see the anterior capsule tear now. So yeah, at one of those cross-chop maneuvers, I must have been on top of the capsule and just chopped the capsule. So grabbing that last piece with some vacuum, holding it on the tip, and then matching it with the chopper and carefully removing the lens pieces. Again, just mashing it and then removing it. Fortunately, even though there's an anterior capsule tear, it's not propagated posteriorly. So I take the chopper out, push BSS in, take the phaco tip out, and I go in with the ironing handpiece. Again, I'm not quite sure if I realize that I have an anterior capsule tear at this point. I'm in cortex mode, peeling the cortex from anterior to posterior, starting subincisionally always, teasing it up. Trying to get that subincisional stuff out. And this is where I pause and I realize, something funny is going on. So this is when I realize the light bulb goes off and I have an anterior capsule tear. And I'm thinking first, is that an anterior capsule tear? And then of course, second, how did that happen? So obviously I can't just stay frozen. I have to keep on going. So I go ahead and start removing the rest of the cortex. The good news is it's an anterior capsule tear. It has not propagated posteriorly. I switch to polish mode, polishing the posterior capsule. And I'm real ginger when I get to the edge of the tear here, just removing that fine lens material. I don't want to worsen the tear. Polishing under the rexus edge as well. Just trying to push the anterior capsule leaflets back down. Turn off infusion and then pushing cohesive viscoelastic to fill the bag. And then I also push viscoelastic on the surface above the capsule tear so that the edges of the capsule tear are down into the appropriate position. You don't want to push so much viscoelastic in the bag that it actually will propagate the anterior capsule tear and split it open like splitting a zipper open. So you want to push some viscoelastic on top of the tear as well, so there's equal viscoelastic forces, so it's not pushing it up or down. It's just going to stay in the neutral position at the capsule plane. I'm using a cannula to hold the incision, push some more viscoelastic in. This is a single piece acrylic lens that's going into the capsular bag. And then I quickly transition to the cannula and reposition the lens, making sure before the haptics open up that I'm able to turn the lens in such a way that the haptics are going to be perpendicular to the tear. So I've quickly turned it. The haptics are perpendicular to the tear. There's no propagation of the tear posteriorly. There's no vitreous in the anterior chamber. There's no vitreous loss whatsoever. The anterior capsule tear is isolated. The lens is perfectly centered within the bag. In other situations where I've had anterior capsule tears, this has worked very well without any trouble. You can see the lens is nice and solid. This Acrosoft material is actually quite good at being nice and tacky, and so it stays into the capsular bag pretty well, and it won't rotate. And so that's really nice in this situation. It's nice and tacky and it won't rotate, and you don't want it to rotate because the haptics need to stay perpendicular to that tear. And so I'm very confident. I come out, push BSS to keep the chamber nice and inflated, and quickly hydrate the incisions, and that's the end of the case. So again, I must have inadvertently torn the anterior capsule with one of the cross-chop maneuvers. And it's, again, people are going to comment that that's dangerous, but as I always say with any technique, it's not the technique that's dangerous, it's the poor execution that's the problem. So anything it may be, whether it's surgery or sports teams, when they try to execute their plan, the plan is not bad. It's the execution of the plan that's gone astray. And so in this case, the technique is very good. I've done this on thousands of cases, but if I don't place that chopper in the bag, bad things can happen. So fortunately, because I know how to get myself out of these situations, everything went well. But actually, this is part one of the case, because you'll see this patient comes back later with a problem. And I'll share that case with you in the next video. I hope this was helpful to you, and I thank you for your attention.